Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the people who, a bit like the university president from Penn and those other ones that refused to condemn the Hamas protests and so on university campuses. Sometimes these people get fired or they get moved out of a particular job, a particular gig, in this case, the college president, or BLM activists that burn buildings down get arrested, or any of the people that are useful to furthering the globalist program. When they get caught out and there's a severe blowback through sections of the media or a public outcry, then they're usually or quite quickly removed from view. They're just sort of taken out of the, if you like, the spotlight position and just quietly moved into something else, just as lucrative and just as protected and just as well rewarded and so on. Now, I've put together sort of a compilation here, or a list of situations where people have been, again, arrested, fired, or whatever for again, BLM burning buildings down and so on, or news announcers, journalists and so on that have suffered some sort of a blowback. But having a look at, or district attorneys that viciously go after straight white Christian males and that sort of thing, when they're caught out, doctoring evidence, tampering with evidence, and so on and so forth. Do they suffer, if they're caught out, do they suffer any penalties? And are those penalties anything more than a slap on the wrist? Now, let's just contrast with, the university. There's the university president, supposedly the senior custodian of university policy and so on. And this is someone who says if you misgender somebody, then you'll get thrown out of the college. If you're a straight white male and a female accuses you of date rape, then the burden of proof against you is crushing. You have to prove you didn't. So the allegation is enough to get you kicked out. If you fat phobic somebody, or transphobic, again, thrown out of college. So the bar is set very high. If you're or the accusation bar rather is set very low. The behavioural bar is set very high, but the accusation bar is set. So if you're a straight white male, then and you transgress on any of these things, or straight white person, particularly a straight white male, then the penalties are swift and vicious. You are held to a very high standard, and the accusation bar is very low. Anyone can point the finger at you, and you have to prove you didn't do it. And if you don't prove it quickly and absolutely decisively, 100%, I wasn't even in the universe at the time it happened, so it can't have been me. Unless you've got that level of evidence, then you're going to be thrown out of the university, or suffer some considerable, lose your job, lose your income, not be able to get another job in that field or profession. So the penalties are severe. But if you're a globalist activist or somebody pushing or enabling or facilitating the globalist agenda, creating social division and those sorts of things, then the penalties you suffer for doing things that are far worse, the penalties you suffer are very lenient. So let's look at as an example of this president at the university. It's topical in the media right now. So there's a whole lot of blowback, threats to withdraw donations from the university and endowments, things like that. So the university could suffer considerably, but is it all a crazy tap dance? Many of the contributors are Jewish, and yet they're threatening and talking about maybe, but they don't seem to really be that concerned. They're blowing a lot of smoke about it's outrageous what the river to the sea and and all these things. Hamas, so the activists and the so-called protesters on college, they're clearly being aided, facilitated, supported, morally supported, and with logistical sort of support to do these things. And when most of their, not all, but most of their contributors, as in contributors and donations to the college, come from Jewish groups. So that's pretty dumb to do that. Obviously not going to work out so well. So there are threats to withdraw. But I can't imagine these things were done initially without any consultation to your biggest, richest donors, all of whom are Jewish. So I don't think this is a real sort of conflict here. I think it's been confected, or partially at the very least. So the college professor, the college president, who I thought, just in my opinion, handled that congressional hearing, and the answers very badly. I can't imagine a clumsy, more dumbass way of responding, trying to rigidly stay true to this insane ideology, whilst at the same time refusing to have an equal application of policy. And again, if you can be thrown off the universe, thrown out of the university for misgendering somebody or being fat phobic, but you can make calls for genocide, but it's okay. It's contextual. How fucking insane is that? So it was in terms of optics and public relations, it was badly handled. So the university decides, okay, well, we got to get you out of the spotlight. But she remains, as I understand it, that person remains a tenured academic, and just needs to be appointed to a few university committees, and then will easily and effortlessly make up any lost income, assuming there is any lost income. Bit of a prestige hit, but basically the people around her at the university agree with her position. So she's not doing anything controversial in that ideological microcosm. So outside of that, we may look in dismay at that behaviour, and but inside the university, she's been well supported, surrounded by friends, and surrounded by students and people and faculty members who fully agree with her position and with her ideological situation. So really, there's no penalty. Now, imagine if a straight white male said something like that I support. It's contextual whether or not trans misgendering is right or wrong. It's all contextual, yes, and that, and that anything. Well, the meeting of all those straight white men there, it's contextual. It just wouldn't be accepted. The person would not only lose their job, they'd be thrown off the campus. They may never work again. They'd be hounded for months, if not years afterwards, just to make sure that they never again got a job or never again could afford to feed their family or anything like that. So it's very extremely swift and absolutely vicious in one way, but very soft and slap on wrist for this college president. Now, this college president, as I understand it, won't suffer any financial penalty or anything at all. The big Jewish donators of money are somehow just going to be satisfied if this person is moved out of the president's job, but don't want any further action taken. They don't want her drummed out of the whole university. They don't want her made unemployable forever. I mean, she's already a wealthy woman in her own right, or through affirmative action appointments and jobs she's got. She's already wealthy and comes from quite a well-to-do family, so it's not like she's going to be on the street and homeless if she gets kicked out of the university. I'm sure that the many globalist think tanks will give her a nice cozy gig with lots of money, so she's not under any sort of threat at all. And if you look at I'm just looking at a case here where there was a group of white men who've got a private chat group where they come out with some, what today we would call racist remarks, but it's in a private chat group between each other, but somehow it got infiltrated by some left-wing journalist. I don't know how. The journalist then gets screenshots of the thing, goes to the Department of Prosecutions to instantly take up the case and go after these white guys with all the resources of the state. because they made private racist remarks on a private chat group. These guys were dragged into the court and given a prison sentence, by the way, for I mean, you just can't believe it would happen because they were racist against mass migration. Or fuck, is that a crime now? Whereas, if you're a Black Lives Matter, you can go around, burn down buildings, kill people, beat people up. You can do what the fuck you want, and all you're going to get is a slap on the wrist. Now, again, there was a case where some protesters in an Australian city blocked the downtown for about 5 hours. The police were very slow to respond, asked these people very nicely, would you please, pretty please, pleasey, pleasey, pretty please, with sugar on it, will you move? Because if you don't, we don't really want to, but we're going to have to move you on. So they were, sort of arrested, not really, but they were just given a fine and then let go. And so they're kind of back on the street within minutes of being dragged away. Something they seemed remarkably confident of before it even happened. So I would suggest this is a prearranged thing. They were fined $400, I think, and so all their legal fees and all their fines are paid for by the NGO. So this NGO that arranges pays everything for them, including conveying them there with transport and giving them food and drink and everything. So it's also, yet the NGO gets no fines. The NGO is not being dragged into court or for orchestrating and organising the whole thing, but the protesters are. But again, all their costs and inconveniences and then everything like that are all covered by the NGO. So why yet the misgendering of or using a racist remark in a private chat group, that gets you dragged into court and that gets you with a prison term, but doing that doesn't. So we need to understand the difference in. So going through this, saying there was an attorney general or a prosecutor rather who a district prosecutor who doctored evidence and fabricated evidence, hid evidence, broke every rule under the book just because he wanted to put some white boys in prison. Now, he was fired and did spend one day in prison. But again, the minimum of the minimum penalties for doing what he did. So he was drummed out of the legal profession. But at the exact same time as he was drummed out of the legal profession, his ordinary low-paid public service administrator wife was suddenly given a $500,000 a year job just at the exact same time, purely coincidence. So the money that he was getting and the benefits he was getting from, the associations he was on and the committees, all that sort of stuff, they just paid his wife an equivalent sum of money. And he also got a free house to live in, and his lifestyle hasn't changed one bit, not one bit. I mean, he may be a bit bored sitting around or something, but other than that, he's pursuing his hobbies. He's having a quiet life. He's got a nice top of the range car and a driveway. Lives in a nice house. Goes on nice vacations, and has that $500,000 a year income. Or probably a bit more than that now, coming in the door. So nothing's changed for him. If anything, he may even be slightly better off with more time. So when you look through these people who supposedly, whether it be a journalist, whether it be a Taylor Lorenz, or it doesn't matter, wherever you go, the people that are supposed to be getting fired or demoted or kicked out or this or that, when you actually look at what happens to them, they either suffer no penalty in the end, or they're richly rewarded in other ways. So for services to globalization, you can be very well looked after. And I see these college presidents who are very much a serious part of globalization, turning out activist college kids that hate white society and hate straight white males, and gag, go into orgasmic gagging over the idea of mass migration and creating social division in all sorts of different directions. These people are being looked after and well rewarded and protected from the same laws and the same standards of behaviour that would have you and I unemployable for the rest of our lives. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.